Welcome back to my channel Celebuzz. Please share and subscribe and press the bell icon for new updates. Please realize how fortunate we've been to for 13 years with the same squad, and for that reason my coworkers have a strong bond with Frank. However, the main concern is how he accomplished obtaining in the company of all those involved. Somehow he managed in order to unite us all with such unique characters and convince them to execute a fantastic job in the same group. Frank possessed an innate talent for in a way that makes everyone feel at ease. It had some similarity to a nail technician. But there's something intriguing I would like to convey to you, those who I am employed by, to be nothing more than a little sister on television for more than 10 years. What steps did we take to form a relationship of that kind? Come work with me as, let's go into the tale that explains this harmony. In the modern moving image, don't be shy, drop a comment. If you can relate to Frank Fritz or zero if you hold a contrasting viewpoint. If you want to know the real deal regarding, please give this a thumbs up, and stay updated by subscribing after that. Not only is American Pickers, a show centered around the pursuit of antiques. Its additional meaning for the link and camaraderie on par with 3 distinct individuals. Mike Wolfe established the Campagna motivating factor. His name is Frank Fritz, friend for life and reliable confidant companion. Along with the astute Danielle Colby, woman with a wide range of skills, who oversees the things that happen behind the scenes and maintain being a part of the team. When they sincerity and genuine enthusiasm provided, they reveal its one-of-a-kind allure, resulting in a deeply felt bond with many individuals' audiences in the United States, and further than that. But nothing is ever truly permanent when, out of nowhere, Frank disengaged from the perform in 2020. Nothing was provided for the fan community, inherently uncertain, speculative, and subjective, problems with health, disputes, over-concern, and maybe treachery. Yet nobody those engaged were heard, and the protracted being silent intensified the tension, sparking a hitherto unseen surge of public discussion, until just recently, when Mike Wolfe, and unexpectedly, Danielle Colby, made an appearance in an open trial, in which Frank Fritz was a defendant, whom a guardian has been appointed following a catastrophic stroke. The truth started to come to light. What gives? Precisely what made public? Let's get into the complete narrative now during the courtroom. It was a quite little courtroom. However, millions of admirers' gazes appeared to zero in on one singular historical event. The chairs in their proper locations, the lawful legal documents, attorney's notes, and a dense emotional fog. It was nothing like the usual trial. Despite the absence of violent clash, no detonation from one side to the other. Rather than that, nothing allowed space for the deeply moving statements that for an extended period of time. Dear Mike. Wolfe strode in, a fatigued expression on his face. His stature was accentuated by his gray suit, make a lean body look bulkier. The ever-venomous Danielle Colby suddenly fell into an eerily quiet state. With her, having her hair pulled back in a tidy bun, she applied minimal makeup. Faint, but crimson did color her eyes. It is their little conversation had place between. Their presence collectively held greater significance than any government statement. Amidst a brief pause, completely silent as the judge's coin tosses among paperwork and the careful scrutiny of as the court swells to accommodate all, had a feeling that the words that were going to be spoken were not merely a formality in the law, but also the audience had been anticipating for 3 years to come pay attention. Nothing here related to a case or disagreement over real estate, and it wasn't a typical scandal in the media. Wow. What a becoming aware of Frank's guardianship, the man who had supported Mike throughout his, for almost 20 years on a national television. The patient had a stroke in 2022. Frank's ability to care deteriorated, alone, and currently resides in seclusion, relying on another person to choices regarding his healthcare and solve his financial problems. According to legal records, Mike, Danielle, and she showed up separately, firmly connected to, hello, Frank. The present state of their life, they do not serve as defendants or party bringing suit. Just 2 individuals bearing the weight of the words that were, maybe they need to have mentioned it earlier in the past. Frank's lawyer accomplished refrain from fighting them. Regarding Thea, on the other hand, it was considered a crucial illustrating the breadth of their closeness to him, an important consideration in determining who should be optimal choice for Frank's care in the time to come. Mike and Danielle remained silent at the beginning. Mike was the one who spoke first, audible yet unambiguous and firm. Today, I will not be defending alone. An apology is in order, he declared, his voice quivering, yet his eyes unwavering. With a firm grasp on his hand, Danielle gave him a nod, stabilizing herself before to the wave. the courtroom environment made to sound as if completely muted into an infinite abyss. Clicking did not occur. The recorder's tape, with no emphasis on the ritual, spectators weren't observer of a judicial process. Wow, what a confronting the public with individuals who had thought of themselves as loved ones. Affirming the findings of Nielsen, earning more than $3 million, American Pickers' audience engagement per episode peaked between from 2011 through year 2014. That sum demonstrated the extent to which they three were. Even more so at this moment, they were back together, although in a setting that no one had anticipated, the courtroom. Within, we did not find any severe. A judge alone can conduct cross-examinations, watching, occasionally slowly nodding. Without a doubt, this wasn't a punitive measure. The test, but an essential area for individuals, take part in confronting a friend and themselves, those who were unable to express yourself. People who formerly believed this trio was known to them, and now they will hear each and every one of the individuals involved. Raw, unrehearsed, and entirely human being. Mike Wolfe's admission while he was not qualified to testify as a witness, brazen individual who at one point traversed across the nation in pursuit of riches, concealed in dilapidated garages and rural structures. On that particular day, he was a failure, well-wisher, a guy who was unable to maintain a bond that is more valuable than every single thing. The man he was stood tall as cast off the glamour of celebrity in order to expose what had been dormant for those many years. My mistake was not phoning, "Hello, Frank." At first Mike's voice was flat, but this once commanding voice now strained with emotion. Someone should have contacted him, yet to have made sure he was all right, but not me. The confession resounded, not just throughout the course of the trial, but also amid the thoughts of everyone who had come after, their path from the beginning of the performance. On about 300 occasions of Mike and Frank, who were American Pickers, had been bound together. Their relationship is so powerful, as if they could decipher each other's thought processes. On the other hand, viewers was oblivious to mounting demands, limited time for filming, the television aspirations, and the weight of sustaining a thriving television brand. Dear Mike, bravely faced this. He actually died. Recognized the incredible quality of the show. Achievement had drew him away from the truth. I made a conscious decision to prioritize my job, and work hours cast a shadow over the paramount consideration, my bond with, "Hello, Frank." People in the audience nodded, but concurring, but recognizing a reality that applies to everyone. A large number of people have allowed the crucial details are lost in their digits as they sought after what appeared urgent. When Frank abruptly departed from the 2020 presentation without bidding farewell, cheerleaders could feel the emptiness instantly. In his absence had no justification, and Mike maintained her single on-screen appearances. As the series progressed, people started posing queries. The internet went boom regarding questions. Frank has gone missing. For what? What transpired? Mike and Frank got into a fight. Mike opted not to respond and instead dead silence. He elaborated on the reason for this in court, that it would be temporary and that we could remind each other that things will work out, resumed as before. Yet, I was incorrect. I permitted, an eerie stillness pervades augmented their rift. He took stock of the courtroom as a whole. His gaze landed on a vacant chair, off limits to Frank. In the event that he were okay sufficient to go, I assumed I would have time, Mike remarked. In spite of this, we've all to the extent that we anticipate. Confession and apology were rolled into one exercise caution. Even at self-blame, Mike wasn't finished. Before anyone else, he confessed at the heart of the divide. Some distinctions existed among Frank and I, and our collaboration in the program's trajectory and in numerous private issues. An impasse was reached, where our communication was hindered previously, and I was ill-equipped to that chasm. Frank had previously conveyed his own dissatisfaction with a short interview in 2021 expressing his feelings of abandonment to his son. Mike has not communicated with me in any way, not even only one word. That declaration remained in the passionate admirers like a scar. Now, Micah validated that fact and provided no excuses. That was my failure. I had no time to do what was proper to do. In my head I could phone whenever you want, without ever knowing that might one day arrive when that chance should instead gone. Their justification reveals a man facing his own reflection before people in general, and a buddy who is unable to foray. Well, get back to me. During the course of the trial, Mike lifted their gaze, avoiding the judge and the viewers, however, in a not scene. Frank was much more than a working partner. I had known him since we were kids, someone with whom I had several conversations. He became quieter. My mistake was not phoning who he was. And this is the last stand, where I can say, look at this right here in front of you all. Maybe there's a way for him to hear, I am. Todd Harris, a media strategist, who offers guidance to numerous celebrities on television during a crisis, made remarks about statement made by Mike. The occurrence of affamous people own up to their errors in order to honestly, without placing blame, on external factors or separate from others. Mr. Wolfe's actions did more than just recovered Frank, should he be able to not only comprehend, but also appeal to those affectionately cherished them loved ones. As he wrapped up his remarks, Mike stressed that this is not the final chapter. No, I just can't, hoping that people will overlook my mistakes, not at all. I truly doubt that Frank will comprehend. I wanted to let you know that, because the lack of sound was intolerable for Menot now. Just as Mike descended from the room went silent again as soon as you stood up. On the other hand, this occasion was unique stillness, not caused by stress, but by contemplation and the start of the truth. Amidst the chaos, Danielle Colby unbearable suffering. Would Mike Wolfe have been the one taking center stage to confront under the microscope? Danielle Colby was, who emerges from the darkness her position, after standing for 3 lengthy years with their shoulders weighed down by war and by shame, taking their place among the unsung heroes. To a T, Danielle is avoiding trips along America's roadways, similar to Mike and behind the scenes, Frank, but in a leadership role, oversawing contracts, calls, and frequently emotional conversations. This is due to the fact that Sheely's somewhere in the center. Danielle now, more than everybody else about divisions emerging among the members. At the time, when she reached the court, she was unable to putt on the stunning costumes for the performance, usual for old-style variety shows. The style. Her attire was uncomplicated, nearly subtly, as if to guarantee full focus was concentrating on what was really crucial. Truthfully, the trusted companion who had accompanied her for about 15 years. Danielle, I ought to have done more, exclaimed, her voice quivering, but firm. Right in the center of them stood I. What did I see? Of them evolve. The gap between us widened. It occurred to me that everything would be all right. Returning to our original thinking, I expected them to resume their conversation, but it was not the case, and I refrained from every single thing. The truth she revealed moved many. It did not disclose an unknown classified information, but because to the fact that it was an uncooked expression of gratitude for someone's futility in being a witness to a friendship disintegrate while Frank is away from the performance. I tried not to take a side on her unique Instagram profile that 100,000+ people who follow them. Her posts were never published, anything to argue for or against all people. However, as per reliable sources, a number of times, Danielle had tried to unite the two guys via electronic correspondence, conveyed, including subtler forms of expression, by way of common acquaintances, but in vain, completed the task. There were moments when I reverted to my childhood in a household, in which both parents have retired engaged in conversation. According to Danielle, her look far away, I refused to make a decision on both sides, but I just couldn't turn a blind eye to it. And in the end, I decided to keep quiet. Plus, that's my position feeling guilty about. Obviously, she wasn't hiding anything, due to dread rather than apathy, fear of escalating the problem, anxiety over badly interpreted, dread of abandoning both guys without delay. She decided to avoid it because of that, despite her insidious knowledge that only made the chasm wider. After media speculation long implied that Danielle had taken a stand as she persisted in making appearances beside Micah tomorrow in court, but later in the year, she vehemently disagreed that assumption. Never did I take a side. I got to my feet in recollection of an earlier period when the trio collectively, we were like a family. Her hand suddenly withdrew a folded sheet of paper, for holding purposes only, not reading, being an origin of comfort. Frank is someone I long for. It was nice when Wethy would joke, bicker, and then eat lunch in the workplace. Not much things. Unfortunately, I am unable to contact you at this time to inquire regarding that group. Given that Frank's stroke occurred I was placed under medical supervision in July 2022, responsibility for overseeing any direct touch with he was /turn off. Rumors have it that Quad City damage to Frank occurred in many parts of the neural circuits that control movement and memory, significantly limiting his abilities. Danielle stands out among granted permission to visit, but such trips are unusual and they don't necessarily. Does Frank know who she is? With Little Make, a 2023 social media post, Danielle published a little film of herself, I didn't desire to sit in a car and read while I filming this, but before I do, let me clarify that I long for the days of Frank and for everything to restore things to their previous state. If Frank's narrative or the deeply moving remarks made by Danielle moved you, please don't hesitate to express your feelings and share them with us below. Stay away from didn't see the need to like and subscribe to, then navigate to discover the surprising turns in the subject of this subjective journey. Substantially more than 1,000 the first 24 hours, 1 million views, evidence of the audience's continued courts are concerned with this friendship. Her message was clear. Keeping at it, just because she was with Mike at the time, more than hello, Frank. There will be times when we must press on, since time is of the essence, but that doesn't imply I've lost track of anybody. A straightforward assertion that hit home for. That was the same for a large number of people. Dilemma entangled in the middle of a couple. It denotes profoundly, and nobody is fully responsible fault. Looking at it from a mental health standpoint, Dr. Laura Gibson, a social psychologist from as pointed out by the University of Chicago, to me, Danielle is the embodiment of a victimized mediator, a position brimming with sentimental value and frequently badly interpreted. She lacks the authority to make decisions, but must deal with the emotional fallout those on either side, which might cause for an extended period of time, even when there has been no overt misconduct. In court, Danielle remained composed, despite Hurst more tears than any other emotion. When she mentioned Frank, her tone became kinder. I have no idea whether Frank is still hearing, however. All I ask is that he to be aware that he is constantly on my mind, and I apologize. I lacked the strength to maintain my companions in unison. There were a lot of people in the defendants fumbled for tears. Their feelings floods, not due to the use of eloquent language, however, owing to an unpleasant elementary truth. You don't always have to betray someone in order to cause them harm. Everything that there's no need to speak accidentally result in irreversible damage. Crack. The hidden backstage tales that transcend the confines of television, adorned with nothing except joyful moments, clever, intriguing, captivating vintage negotiations. Still another unspoken fact, found out the thing itself. Evidence presented at court shows that with one another's consent, Mike and Danielle Frank and his connection remained strong, reduced as a result of just one occurrence. No controversy brewing behind the scenes, with no major disputes, no betrayal, according to the news-made assumptions. There was a significant amount of softer, step-by-step until it was too late for anyone to notice after the fact. The specific day escapes me at the moment right now. An end result was not reached. Situation as Mike stated. Events were placed at a leisurely pace. Less frequent calls were received, discussions more concise. The stillness became more durable following each journey. For what looked as though little adjustments were really the first indicators of a relationship started to fade. When it comes to innovative collaboration, experts such as Professor Linda Hemmings of on the campus of Yale University, there is referred to as silent deterioration over the long-run relationships. It's when no big disagreements arise, however. The bond declines as a result of each people who are not recognized by the some other. Apparently, this took place when our friends Frank and Mike. As time went on, Mike's consumed by the growth of American Pickers licensing of goods for the general public and planning and executing extensive antique shows. Conversely, Frank stayed firmly established and he prioritized his lower-key way of living, searching for hidden gems, and apparently devoid of enthusiasm for business endeavors. Frank was resistant to change. Dear Danielle, disclosed in court his desire no changes to be made, in his vehicle, operational protocols, and even his coffee ritual in the morning. As a result, Mike was continually seeking going forward. It all started with a disagreement in style, evolved into an widening disparity. For the year 2018, Frank's health started to decline, and he had to give myself a short break for spinal medical care. Mike kept shooting throughout at this point, which has caused some admirers to think that Mike purposefully shoved Frank out the program. There was no formal announcement issued during that period, however. Legal records find out that this was Frank's first felt supplanted, recalling the time when Frank had spinal fusion. Production went forward as planned, and too assumed he would be okay, but I neglected to inquire. Talk to him personally if he feels abandoned. I should have, Mike said. Now I know. Looked into. Downcast. In the same year, a portion of the production crew, individuals having the closest relationships with Frank, were substituted. The anguish of parting with his system of assistance became more robust, and someone on the crew disclosed that Frank frequently skipped shots in favor of sitting alone, taking part in stimulating debates. Upon his held the title of greatest storyteller in the category, however, He has barely spoke. Danielle was also cognizant of the shift. During my conversations with Mike, I informed him, Frank appeared to be retreating, but it was simply a phase we all thought. Andre relaxed attitude formed the initial phase of an array of chances that were squandered. As 2020 rolled around, the CO-19 epidemic struck, which led to the end of filming. Everybody departed spent over 8 months at home between interruption. Subsequently, 0 texts. There were no phone conversations between Mike and hello, Frank. I am unable to provide an explanation, Mike stated. Perhaps I mistakenly believed Frank was furious or what he need room. Yet I was incorrect. Each of us were incorrect. No one ever saw Frank return. No formal farewells, announcements, online, postings. When word got out about his word got out through various media outlets and at which time, both Mike and Danielle understood their acquaintance had passed away quite some time ago. The sickness was hit hard. I understood that I was ignorant during the past almost 2 years. Well, that's not good. Quite awful, Mike spoke with an equestrian accent. Court officials never questioned Danielle or Mike to admit, but all through assertions, the factors that led. The judge or jury totally quiet down wasn't the onus of duty under the law, but the gravity of the reality. On occasion, all it takes is avoiding contact. Moreover, not to mention, cherished ones can stealthily vanish away from us, in the same way that they subtly got off the couch. Fritz Frank, the quiet companion at the storm's epicenter. As soon as individuals consider Americans who seek out antiquities, the initial picture that countless people, audience members aren't limited to the vintage vehicle's heirlooms, while Frank Fritz's straightforward manner, sarcastic wit, and carefree candor. Neither Mike nor Frank were as showy as dramatic, yet he was the one who clarity and friendliness that enabled him cherished one. Thus, when Frank unexpectedly went missing from the program, it wasn't merely a shift in staff. Quite the ordeal distress, a hole that cannot be filled with a fresh appearance may actually complete. None of Frank's comments were ever raised. He refrained from making any statements in public and failed to provide a counter-argument. In a calm removed themselves from the spotlight, departing admirers who have nothing except speculation. However, there was no choice. The outcome of the truth. Unfortunately, his health became worse. If the court is to be believed the paperwork, Frank had a majora stroke that occurred in July of 2022 and caused a partial disability on the affected side parts of his body crippled and injured. That part of his brain is in charge of language and memories that expire quickly. He is unable to continue with himself, handle his own money, or function without assistance. He currently needs complete care of a minor. Formerly known as traveled to a great many states and was able to recognize each classic vehicle from a century ago. Still don't forget his doctor's name. Area tragic event involving both sickness and because to chronic stress and a poor diet way of life. And Mike himself acknowledged, years on their own in loneliness. Frank, Danielle, and I have met, displayed in a legal proceeding. On occasion, he see my face. There are moments when he breaks into a smile. At other times, he remains silent. But whenever I step out of that room, I get as if a fragment of my history had crumbled not at all. Frank is childless. He has no spouse. In his cousin, who is now the closest relative, named as the person responsible for handling his legal matters. Nevertheless, it is in court that Mike and Danielle are named. Papers as people experiencing emotional via their shared past with, hello, Frank. No way will Frank ever be left alone, not now. In addition to Mike didn't stop at self-lame, the speaker reported. At long last, he took to the public addressed more fundamental concerns underlying the rift. Some distinctions existed among regarding our work methods and in several individual concerns. Even reached it became impossible for us to communicate in the same we used to. But I was utterly confused about fill that void. In his own words, Frank disappointed with a brief interview in 2021 regarding his son, expressing his sentiments regarding Left Behind. No one has gotten back to me from. No comment, Mike. That declaration persisted as a Scarlet fan. Now, Mike validated that fact and provided no excuses. That was my failure. It was my fault. I was preoccupied. According to Mike, I believed I could contact at any time. However, I was unaware that might one day arrive when that chance should instead absent. Neither the court nor Mike were ever questioned Danielle to admit, but all, the while based on their accounts. What led to the courtroom to utterly quiet down was not the weight of a duty to comply with the law, but bearing the brunt of reality. Not reaching out is sometimes all that is needed. Remove it. Also, people we care about the most can subtly fade away from sight, exactly as silently disembark off the display screen. No, Frank was more than that. I had known him since we were kids. Someone who's endured a great deal alongside me, Mike remarked, looking at a chair that was empty meant in honor of Frank. Should he recover sufficiently to go, I believe I could fit it in. But none. No one has less time than they believe they do. Laughter on TV is masked by actual humans afflicted with feelings, traumas, and feels bad about it. Danielle and Mike confessed their blunders while on the sidelines, not placing blame on one another or external factors. They didn't make any major promises under the law, solely heartfelt expressions of regret, with a serious vow to refrain from and leave Frank alone any longer. In the majority of civil trials, one party offers a request for assistance as the opposite challenges it. However, in this case the most occurred. As a result of the unstated agreement, it was only fair that Frank's caretakers, people who had genuinely cared for him, even after committing errors. As soon as Danielle spoke, I have no interest in being named guardian battle. I have an obligation to pay off Frank's regret and a fresh commitment. Shockingly, the entire courtroom went silent, for reasons related to feelings, as well as honest assessment. Additionally, the court was involved in debunking urban legends that circulated among thought there was no way to save Mike and Frank, strangers, from whom Danielle had opted factions, that the financial divide the limelight. It was all untrue. Their reality is trickier, hurts more, and humane. Just regular folks who once we'd but are now estranged had mutual understanding. In cases where news organizations initially covered the story, numerous people believed this was Mike's final-ditch effort to remedy his image. Nevertheless, following the session, my perspective shifted. Not due to fervent addresses yet, due to the fact that observed a genuine individual who shown no fear of expose their suffering. No one made an effort to muse the media but remained positioned in the courtroom attempting to mend the relationship that had him down to a long-lost acquaintance earlier. The most important thing about this courtroom was within the process of becoming a free speech, being honest in a culture where false knowledge reigns supreme, revises in public relations. An unusual occurrence where well-known people take the stage and discuss honesty is the key to rebuilding trust. And regarding the viewers of American Pickers, the reality is worth more than the arrival of a new season. Current state. Additional episodes weren't necessary. All it took was for Mike, Danielle, and Frank were once one thing real. The judge made a decision after the hearing, did not announce a victor. What she did sought a medical report for follow-up on the state of Frank, and stressed that everyone here today needs to keep going, to take an active role in how Frank lives his life. A judgment that complied with all applicable laws and extreme compassion. They departed from Thevenue. Mike chose not to communicate with news writers. Danielle could only muster a little salute the media, but their gaze is fixed, no longer averted their eyes. Dude at last got around to saying it. I don't, in order to begin. Immediately after being pardoned, recuperation and potentially Frank included, even though he was speechless, believed this to be their last chance. The chamber filled with crimson eyes, but resolute stares isn't only the climax of a terrible reuniting, yet the start, the commencement of a fresh dedication resulting from, appeared at one point beyond repair. While the hearing was underway with his speech and behavior, Mike and Danielle clearly demonstrated they weren't really looking for forgiveness. Alterations were to be made by them. Leave the hollow apologies and fake news at the door. Statements. As an alternative, a sincere pledge originating in people. Leave us alone. Just Frank, not now. Notorious Mike Long faced backlash for indifference and preoccupation with celebrity, announcing his intention to pay Frank a visit time after time, regardless of his health being aware of. Time is not on my side, but I may choose to be existing in the here and now as of today. It was stated only one word. However, in the case of who in the past kept quiet and receded, it was a significant transformation. Danielle, with a background in served as the peacekeeper, contrary to stewed between no longer. Her stance is supplementary to who he was. I promise to support Frank no matter what. Does he recall our past interactions? Can we just listen? His being is what's important. Has since by itself. While they were testifying, what courtroom eerily quieted wasn't the weight of one's legal responsibilities, but truth. On occasion, all that's required is staying far, our loved ones included. Even the most can vanish without a trace from our existences, simultaneously with their stealthy exit located on the display. The serene Frank Fritz companion in the midst of the tempest. At the time when Americans picture pickers, the initial mental picture that is generated for a large audience, including not only the elderly vehicles stocked with vintage items, however, Frank Fritz with his spare manner and frank banter and completely risk-free the truth. Frank was much more than a working partner. I had known him since we were kids, a person who confided in and shared so much with I am. His tone was more kind. It was not I who made the phone call, who he was, and this is the last stand, where I can. Say all of you can see this right now. In some way, I'm hoping he hears me. Dear Mike, own up to my failure. I had no time to do what was proper to do. In my head I could contact at any moment without being detected, that the time will eventually arrive when such chance would be lost forever. Unexpected events can happen in life. Then it might be too late to feel remorse. Mike's situation deeply moving. Tribute to Frank, a beloved befriender. Act as a potent symbol of significance of the connections all around us. Treasure every second and never allow chances to pass you by. How are you? Consider this narrative. How about we gain knowledge from these blunders? Keep in mind, be sure to include a comment section if you feel sorry for Frank Fritz or do nothing if in my opinion, you're incorrect. Remember to support our content by giving us a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. Another story that touches a chord. Until then, after that.